Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be exploring something really essential for how we work these days: collaborative leadership. And we're going to figure out why it's so important in the modern business world.
Sounds good.
We've got these excerpts from this research paper called Collaborative Leadership, Engaging Collective Intelligence for Organizational Success. Kind of a mouthful.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we'll make sure we pull out the good stuff for you.
Perfect.
Have you ever worked on like a team project and you just wish everyone was on the same page?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
That's where collaborative leadership comes in.
Right.
So it's fascinating how the style of leadership really moves beyond those like traditional hierarchies.
Yeah, it does.
It's about like using everybody's knowledge, everybody's insights to really get things done, especially in situations where the old way of doing things, top down, just isn't enough anymore.
It's true. Yeah, it's definitely about sort of bringing everyone together and everyone working together.
And this paper really emphasizes that. Especially now in our super interconnected world, leaders can't just be giving orders.
Right.
It argues they need to create environments where everyone feels empowered to sort of give their ideas and their expertise.
That's interesting, yeah.
It's like the difference between a conductor really strictly controlling every note versus a band jamming together, improvising, creating something dynamic.
Well, I like that. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with that shift, it requires a whole new mindset from leaders.
Absolutely.
Especially with, how global teams and partnerships are on the rise. Now leaders have to navigate things like cultural differences and how to build trust and inspire people they might not even manage directly.
Right. And, something that really jumped out at me from this research,
Okay.
it highlights that even those leaders who've been super successful in those more traditional settings, they need to adapt and embrace this more collaborative approach. It's almost like learning a new dance. It might feel a little awkward at first, but once you get the hang of it, you can move with more agility and grace.
I love that, yeah. And the thing is, it applies to anyone. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO or not. Think about just projects at work, maybe community initiatives, or even planning a family vacation.
Oh, yeah.
Using those collaborative leadership skills can make any group effort so much more effective and enjoyable.
For sure. And the research is also really honest about the challenges involved. It acknowledges that making this shift to a more collaborative mindset, it can be hard. A lot of organizations still reward individual achievements over team success.
Right.
And, well, old habits die hard. So where do we even begin?
Well, creating a culture of really open and honest conversation, that's absolutely key.
Yeah.
Leaders need to get good at listening, synthesizing all those different perspectives, and guiding the team towards that shared vision.
Yeah.
The research actually uses this phrase I really like. It talks about creating a plan to win, meaning everybody understands the goals, everybody feels motivated to achieve them.
I like that. I really resonated with that, too, when I was reading this, that analogy of the plan to win.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But how do we actually do that? How do we, as this research suggests, actually engage that collective intelligence? What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, collective intelligence, it isn't about just getting everyone to agree.
Right.
It's about creating an environment where people feel comfortable sharing all those diverse perspectives.
Right.
Even the ones that might challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
And you really want to build that environment of psychological safety.
Psychological safety. What exactly does that mean?
Well, it basically means people can express their opinions freely, share ideas, even admit when they're not sure about something, all without the fear of, being judged or facing negative consequences. You want to create that space where vulnerability is actually a strength, not a weakness.
Right. Okay. I see how that could really encourage much more open communication and get the ideas flowing.
Yeah.
But, in a fast-paced work environment, how can a leader actually cultivate that kind of psychological safety?
Well, there's a few things they can do. It starts with showing a little vulnerability themselves, admitting when they don't have all the answers, and actively seeking feedback from their team.
Okay, so leading by example, showing that it's okay to not be perfect, right, and not know everything.
Exactly. It also means really listening to your team, acknowledging those contributions they're making, and responding to any concerns in a way that shows you really value what they have to say.
That makes sense. So it really sounds like active listening is key here.
It really is, yeah.
But what about when disagreements come up? How can these collaborative leaders actually handle those in a constructive way?
That's a good question. And, well, disagreements are bound to happen whenever you're working together. It's just human nature. The key is to see those disagreements as, well, opportunities for growth and innovation, not as threats.
So not avoiding conflict altogether, but actually using those disagreements to find even better solutions.
Exactly. And, this often involves setting some ground rules for how you're going to discuss things, making sure everyone feels heard, and focusing on finding solutions that work for the whole team.
That makes a lot of sense. I can already see how this approach could lead to more creative and effective solutions overall. But it seems like it would take some pretty specific skills from the leader, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Collaborative leadership isn't about sitting back and just letting everyone do their own thing.
Right.
It needs a very specific skill set.
Okay, so let's dive into those. What are some of those tools that collaborative leaders need to have in their toolkit?
One of the most crucial is that ability to facilitate really meaningful conversations. It's about guiding those discussions, keeping them focused, and making sure everyone has a chance to participate.
Yeah.
You also have to be really good at managing conflict, right?
Right.
Making sure disagreements are handled constructively and don't, throw the team off track.
It kind of sounds like a collaborative leader is like the conductor of an orchestra, making sure all the different instruments are working together, but also allowing for some improvisation and individual expression too.
That's a great analogy, yeah. And building on that, another important skill is empowering others. Collaborative leaders don't hold on to power, they give it away. They give their team members that freedom and the resources they need to really take ownership and make those decisions.
Right. It's about recognizing that leadership is not just about you. It's about setting that stage for everyone on the team to shine. But how do you balance that empowering others with making sure everyone's still on the same page, working towards those same goals?
Right. And that's where clear communication and a shared vision are really important.
Okay.
Collaborative leaders are excellent communicators. They can explain the team's goals really well, the values, the expectations, and they make sure everyone knows their role and how their work contributes to the bigger picture.
So even though you're giving people that freedom, you're still providing that framework and that clear path forward.
Precisely. And this ties back to that idea of psychological safety that we were talking about. When people feel safe, supported, empowered, well, they're more likely to take those risks, be creative, and contribute their best ideas.
This has been so helpful already. I'm starting to see how all these different parts of collaborative leadership really fit together.
Good.
But I'm also wondering how this style of leadership adapts to the changing landscape of, the modern workplace. How do leaders stay so agile and responsive in a world that's always in flux?
It's a great question, and it takes us to another essential skill for collaborative leaders: adaptability. In today's world where everything is changing so fast, there's no one right answer.
So it's about being willing to experiment, learn from those mistakes, and make changes as needed.
Exactly.
Embracing the unknown and seeing it as an opportunity to grow.
Exactly. Collaborative leaders need to be okay with not knowing everything and be ready to embrace those new ideas and approaches.
This is all incredibly valuable information, and I can already see how these principles could apply in so many different contexts. But before we go on, I'd love to hear from you, the listener. Have you ever worked in an environment that really embraced collaborative leadership? What was it like? What challenges did you face? And what were the benefits?
That's a good question to think about. We often talk about leadership, theoretically, but it's really important to hear from people who've actually lived it.
Yeah, I agree. Those real-world experiences are so valuable. So we encourage you to reflect on your own experiences with collaborative leadership as we continue to explore this.
That's good.
So we've been talking about all these key elements of collaborative leadership. But one thing that keeps popping up in this research is the role of technology.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the paper really highlights how technology is like this huge facilitator for this kind of collaboration. Just think about how connected we all are these days. We've got instant communication and all these collaboration tools, right at our fingertips.
It's true. It's like we have this amazing orchestra at our disposal with musicians from literally every corner of the globe, ready to jam together whenever we need.
That's a great way to put it. But, even though technology can be so powerful, the research also says it's not a magic bullet. We still need to be really thoughtful about how we use these tools.
Right. It's not just about firing off emails or having endless Zoom meetings.
Right, exactly.
It's about using these tools in a way that actually breaks down those silos and builds relationships and creates that space for the kind of collaboration we keep discussing.
You got it.
Yeah.
We need to think of technology as a way to make human connection better, not to replace it.
For sure. And so much of what we've been talking about really comes down to trust and open communication.
Yeah.
But the research also says that there are these specific leadership skills that are absolutely necessary to make this whole collaborative thing actually work. Can you give us a little preview of what those skills are?
Sure. One of the most important is being able to create trust and that sense of psychological safety. Remember, that's where people feel comfortable speaking up, sharing their ideas, even admitting when they don't have all the answers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Creating that safe space for people to be vulnerable where they're not afraid to, you know, mess up or ask for help.
Exactly. And along with trust, good communication is so important. Leaders need to be great listeners, be able to really grasp those different perspectives and then bring them all together.
So it's almost like being a master weaver, taking all these different threads of ideas and weaving them together to create something beautiful and complex.
Wow, that's a really beautiful way to put it. And another critical skill, especially when you're working collaboratively, is being able to manage conflict in a constructive way.
Yeah, because, disagreements are going to happen.
They are. It's how you deal with them that matters.
So instead of trying to avoid conflict, we should be figuring out how to use those disagreements to come up with even better solutions.
That's right. You want to create a culture where those disagreements are seen as chances to grow and be more innovative. And this means you need leaders who can facilitate those conversations well, making sure everyone is heard and the team finds the best solution.
It seems like these collaborative leaders need to wear a lot of different hats. They're facilitators, conflict resolvers, trust builders, visionaries, all at the same time. What else do they need to be good at?
Oh, there's one more that's often forgotten. Empowerment. Collaborative leaders don't hoard power. They share it. They give their team the power and resources they need to take charge and make their own decisions.
Right. So it's about recognizing that leadership isn't a one-person show. It's about creating an environment where everyone on the team can contribute and excel. But how do you balance giving people that power with making sure everyone is still working together toward those common goals?
Yeah, it's a tricky balance, and that's where clear communication comes in again. Leaders need to be really good at explaining the team's goals, their values, and what's expected of everyone. Everyone needs to know what their role is and how their work fits into the big picture.
So even though you're giving individuals that autonomy, there's still a framework in place. There's still a clear direction from leadership.
Exactly. And this all ties back to that idea of psychological safety again. When people feel secure and supported and empowered, they're much more likely to take risks, be creative, and bring their best ideas to the table.
Okay, I see how all of this connects to those fundamental principles we were talking about earlier. But the business world is always changing. So how does this collaborative style of leadership adapt to all of those shifts and changes?
That is a fantastic question. And it leads us to another crucial skill for collaborative leaders: adaptability. In today's rapidly evolving world, there isn't just one solution that works for everything.
So you're saying leaders need to be open to experimenting, trying new things, even making mistakes, and learning from those mistakes.
You got it. It's all about embracing the unknown and seeing those unforeseen challenges as opportunities for growth and innovation. Collaborative leaders need to be comfortable with not knowing all the answers and be willing to continuously learn and evolve.
This has been so insightful, but it also feels very high level. How do these principles of collaborative leadership actually play out in real-world situations? What does it look like day to day?
That's a really great question, and it's something the research paper touches on as well. Let's take a look at some practical examples.
Okay, so we've been talking about all these kind of high-level ideas, but how do they actually work in the real world? Can you give us some solid examples of what this actually looks like in action?
For sure. So let's say you're in charge of a team, and your job is to create a brand new product. A collaborative leader, they wouldn't just tell everyone exactly what the product should be and who's doing what. Instead, they would get everyone together, the whole team, and brainstorm ideas. Everyone would share their thoughts and perspectives.
So instead of that top-down approach, it's more about using everyone's creativity and expertise, the whole team's.
Exactly. And throughout that whole development process, a collaborative leader would schedule these regular check-ins. Create that space where everyone can communicate openly and give feedback, be actively asking for input from team members, making sure everyone feels like their voice is heard and that they're valued.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about when conflicts come up? We've been talking about how disagreements, they're bound to happen when everyone's collaborating. So how would a leader deal with that in this product development example?
Well, they would see those conflicts as opportunities to learn and grow. They would help the team have those tough conversations in a constructive way. They would guide everyone to explore the different viewpoints and find solutions that are good for everybody.
So it sounds like this collaborative leader is always encouraging these conversations and creating chances for the team to learn and grow as a unit.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's not just about checking things off a list. It's about building this whole culture of like continuous learning and improvement.
And I bet that not only leads to better products, but also a team that's more engaged and motivated.
For sure.
But let's zoom out for a second. We've been really focused on leadership within teams, but can these same principles be applied to like bigger organizational structures?
Oh, absolutely. Collaborative leadership isn't limited to, just individual teams. It can be part of the DNA of a whole organization.
Wow. Okay. What would that look like?
So imagine a company where the leaders are always asking for input from, people at every level, not just the managers. All the decisions are transparent and information is flowing freely between all the different departments.
So it's about breaking down those walls and those old school hierarchies, creating that environment where everyone feels empowered to contribute no matter what their job title is.
Exactly. And that kind of company culture, well, it can lead to way more innovation, better adaptability, and happier employees.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like we've really gotten a good picture of what this whole idea of collaborative leadership is all about.
I agree. It's been great discussing this with you.
Before we wrap things up, though, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've talked a lot about collaborative leadership in the workplace, but these principles can be used in any part of our lives. Think about those groups you're part of in your community, the organizations you volunteer for, even your own family. How can you be more collaborative in those settings? How can you create spaces where everyone feels like they can contribute their ideas and work together towards a common goal?
That's such an important question for all of us to think about. Remember, collaborative leadership, it's not just a set of skills. It's a way of thinking. It's about believing in the power of collective intelligence, valuing all those different perspectives, and creating environments where everyone can truly thrive.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your insights with us today. It's been such a great deep dive into the world of collaborative leadership.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope you got a lot out of this episode. We hope you keep exploring these ideas and think about how you can use these principles of collaborative leadership in your own lives. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep collaborating.